Hey, welcome to The Explainer. We're all about taking big, complex ideas and breaking them down so they're super clear and easy to grasp.
All right, let's jump right in with the one idea from Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad that just turns everything you thought you knew about money completely upside down. It's this: the poor and the middle class work for money, the rich have money work for them. This one idea, it's literally the foundation for everything we're about to talk about.
So here's what we're going to cover in this explainer. First, we'll get into that tale of two dads. Then, we'll look at why your mindset is just everything. From there, we'll break down the huge difference between assets and liabilities, talk about how to get out of the so-called rat race, and finally, pull it all together to see what it means for your own path to wealth. Sound good? Let's do it.
Okay, so the whole book is framed around this really interesting story. It's all about the completely opposite advice the author got as a kid from two very different father figures.
And yeah, the whole framework we're digging into comes from this book, a massive bestseller that has seriously made millions of people stop and rethink their entire relationship with money.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting. You see, these two dads, they represented totally opposite ways of thinking. On one hand, you had his poor dad, that was his actual father, a super educated guy with a PhD who was all about job security. But on the other side, you had his rich dad, his friend's father, who was this street-smart entrepreneur who cared way more about financial freedom than anything else.
So, as you can imagine, that massive difference in their backgrounds led to a huge split in how they thought about money, about work, about risk. And you know what? This difference in mindset, well, that's the next big piece of the puzzle.
And wow, does this slide just nail the difference, right? Poor dad's mindset, it led to these phrases that just shut down any possibility, like saying, "I can't afford it." His advice? Study hard so you can find a good company to work for. But rich dad's mindset, it was all about creating possibilities. He wouldn't say, "I can't afford it." He'd ask, "How can I afford it?" And his advice? Study hard so you can find a good company to buy. See the difference? It's huge. Okay, so all of this difference in mindset, it all leads to what Rich Dad said was the number one most important rule that separates the wealthy from, well, everyone else. And it's all about understanding the difference between an asset and a liability.
All right, first up, an asset. Let's make this super simple, just like the book does. An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. That's it. It's something that pays you. And a liability, you guessed it, it's the complete opposite. It's anything that takes money out of your pocket. Simple, right? But man, is it a powerful idea. And here's how that plays out in the real world. The wealthy, they focus their energy on buying assets, things that make them money, like rental properties, stocks, you name it. The middle class, on the other hand, often spends their money on liabilities that they think are assets. You know, like the big family house with the mortgage, or a fancy new car with a loan.
And getting this one difference, assets versus liabilities, that is the absolute key to the book's main goal, escaping what Kiyosaki famously calls the rat race.
So what even is the rat race? What is this trap that so many of us seem to fall into?
Well, it's this cycle, this hamster wheel that just goes on and on. You know how it goes. You get a job to make some money. Then, as you start to earn more, your expenses and your debts, they just seem to grow right along with your paycheck. And pretty soon, you're completely dependent on that next paycheck just to keep your head above water. So what do? You work harder, and a whole stressful cycle just starts all over again.
So how do you get out? According to Rich Dad, the escape plan is to totally shift your focus. Stop just working for a bigger paycheck. Instead, you have to use the money you earn to buy and build up your asset column, over and over, until the income from those assets is enough to cover all your expenses.
Okay, so how can you actually start using these ideas in your own life? Let's boil everything we've talked about down to the key takeaways you really need to remember.
All right, here are the big ones. First, the rich don't work for money. They make their assets work for them. Second, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. You absolutely have to know the difference between an asset and a liability. Your main focus should be on building up that asset column, minding your own business, as the book says. And the skill that ties it all together? Financial literacy. That's your most important asset of all.
Look, this explainer isn't meant to be financial advice, but it does leave us with a really powerful question to think about. Just take a look at your own life and ask yourself, what is one asset, just one, no matter how small, that you can start working towards acquiring today?